and welcome once again to the Great Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Weber. Welcome to the show. So glad you decided to listen today. What you have found, what you're listening to, is a show where I sit across the table from one or two human beings, and we just hear their life story. Some of the highs, the lows, the wins, losses, challenges, things like that. But most of all, we find out how people came to know Christ and just what it's looked like in the context of a real person's life to follow a real God. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it's hard to hear, but we get to just kind of walk through that journey with them, and it's a beautiful thing. I love doing this show. This is so fun. If you want to follow the show, you can follow it on Facebook at The Great Stories Podcast. If you want to listen to the show, there's a bunch of ways you can do that now. I got it out on all kinds of platforms. You can go to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, the Google Play Store, iHeartRadio's got it. I've got an audio feed on YouTube. In my preference, though, I like the Stitcher or the Apple Podcast, because when you subscribe to those channels, you can actually set your phone to give you alerts, so you don't miss new episodes. If you're into the show, you don't have to go hunting for it. If you want, you can go old school. You can stream it straight off the website at greatstories.podbean.com. If you want to support the show, you can do that in three ways. One, financially, go to patreon.com, search for the Great Stories Podcast. A little cash is always helpful. Another way you can do it is by sharing the episodes. If you hear an episode that you like or reminds you of somebody, or you just want to encourage someone that you know, go ahead and share the links to the episodes. It's a great way for the word to get out. And the third way you can support the show is by coming on it. Please come on the show. I'm not running out of guests, but I want to have more than I can ever get around to in my free time. Come on the show. I always tell people, for every person that talks to me, there's 1,000 other ones that should. And I want you to come on the show. So get in touch with me. Shoot me an email at thegreatstoriespodcast@gmail.com. So today, did something a bit different in that most of the time I'll talk to somebody for a couple hours, and we'll try to cover their whole story, and I'll dig through some deeper details as they come up, just in the context of their story. But today, I wanted to do a little bit more focused interview with a gentleman that I know named John Dutra. Amazing guy, one of the most high-capacity people I know. Like, I do a lot, but this guy does a lot, and it just blows me away. Huge amount of respect for John. But there's a couple things that came up. He was in our church office a while back, and he was just mentioning a couple things about his son and adoption and things like that. And I thought it would be really cool to just chat with him a little bit and just try to spend the bulk of the time talking about just the adoption process with his son. And I'm so glad we did. It was really encouraging, and I just think it opened up a lot of great conversations that I hope those who need to hear or who are thinking about the adoption world, or if that's something they want to do, I hope these words are encouraging to them, and that they take that step of praying that these kids who need to know Christ would be adopted by families who will teach them. In any case, this is the interview with John. I hope you enjoy listening as much as we enjoyed recording. Here we go. So here we sit in Dutra Enterprises.
Dutra Enterprises, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about where we're sitting right now. What is this place?
We're sitting in a second floor office. It's about 3,000 square feet. It was built in 2016. I was proud to help manage that construction. And that came about 10 years after the construction of the building just down the road. That's about 20,000 square feet. And we kind of outgrew our 1,500 square foot suite.
Okay.
So we moved into this 3,000 square foot layout where I got coworkers waving goodbye.
See you later.
See you later. And designed it so that it has kind of glass walls.
It's beautiful.
With some stone up here in the conference room. We got a lot of natural light, and we love it here.
So there's a stone wall behind you. That's my favorite thing so far. I'm getting ideas for for stage design already.
There you go.
That's where I see it. Like, we could do that maybe. Styrofoam or something.
Jazer was here doing an interview with the mayor and also one of the councilmen from Hayward not too long ago.
Right.
Yeah.
That was here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
Put a face to the place.
Yep.
So what kind of company is this? Dutra Enterprises.
This is a commercial real estate firm, so we'll buy and sell buildings. We'll construct buildings and keep them, and we'll also help entitle land so that it can be built for homes.
Okay, when you say construct, you mean like ground up contract, like you hire general contractors and all that stuff? Oh gosh,
yeah,
that's really deep into it.
Yeah,
okay,
but it's a lot of fun.
Do you primarily operate in Fremont or Bay? Like, what is your zone of terror here?
We started here in Fremont in 1972, so we kind of grew to know the city very well.
Yeah,
we kind of grew with the city, so a lot of our stuff is here. But we do have some stuff in Pleasanton, and we have sites that we work at in Hayward and throughout Alameda County and most of the East Bay, as a matter of fact.
Wow! So I bet you're the ultimate guy to like drive around with, and you'd be like, oh, I remember when that was this was we built that, or I sold that twice,
I can tell you stories. I remember my dad driving at the time was a newer Lexus. I think it was like 1992, 1993 Lexus.
Yeah.
Through a field as he was showing me where things could be built or not built, and it was hilarious.
Interesting job.
Oh, yeah.
And you were somewhat instrumental in the Resonate building acquisition and all that. What role did you play for that? I know you were stressed out about it, but
it was one of those things where that's all a God thing, because to have been where I was, which I've been in finance almost all my life, to come into commercial real estate, learn that, become well versed in it, become well known at the city by working with various planners, I was able to just lend a hand and some guidance with that aspect of it.
Okay. Yeah, that's we discovered all these skills that people had in that department, and we're so lucky, because I know I teach kids, I drive a truck, I don't know jack about buildings, and like we're getting one, like okay.
That's okay. I don't know anything about teaching kids, so there you go.
Between us, we got it covered.
That's it. Yeah. It was awfully nice though to see how many different people just came to the front and said, "I can help with this, or I can help with that."
Yeah.
With regard to this building, so
I was glad that they set me free inside of it before the demolition to pre-demolish things. And
I saw some of that video, as a matter of fact.
The evidence, you got to run through walls, and
yeah,
that was fun.
Oh yeah,
that's my specialty.
Yeah.
Go through at some point. I feel like it was we were in an MC together, Glenn Orr's MC last year, and on the first day of that, we went around and like talked about like, hey, I'm Ryan, and here's like basically what I do, this and that and that. And I remember your list kind of blew me away. Give me kind of the rundown of essentially the things that you're involved with, or what constructs John Dutra.
I'm one of those guys who volunteers an awful lot. So I was serving, at that time, I was still serving on the Park and Rec Commission. I had been on the Economic Advisory Commission for the City of Fremont.
Okay.
Obviously at Resonate, now I'm in MC, and love to do teardown with a great group of people. I'm the president of the Washington Hospital Foundation, which is in charge of raising money for the community hospital here in Fremont.
Right.
Involved in Rotary and a few other things as well. So.
A few other things
besides my work, right?
That's right.
Yeah, my work.
A business.
Yeah,
okay.
and I also attend Penn State World Campus. So
yeah,
I'm seeking a degree in psychology there. So,
wow, how far are you into that?
Probably my junior year is where I'm at right now. So probably in about another year and a half, maybe I'll be graduating.
Wow, you'll be a senior.
Yes, again.
Yeah. How long have you been picking away at that?
I really started getting back seriously into it in 2015. I had taken a bunch of preliminary courses and then decided I wanted to wrap it up and finish it. So,
Is that a bachelor level?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. You have other degrees and stuff already, right?
I never finished my business degree, but I did take all the courses for it and just never wrapped that one up. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, good for you.
Thank
That's
you.
cool. Never stop learning.
No, I love it.
So let me just rewind the tape a bit, and so we talked about already when we sat down that you're a native of Fremont.
Mm-hmm.
So where exactly were you born? Washington Hospital?
No,
Oh,
no.
darn it, that'd be great.
Yeah, that would have been really good. Yeah. No, I was born in Oakland. Actually.
Okay.
At the time, we lived in Concord, and maybe it was Livermore at that time. Livermore. Yeah, but I was born in Oakland and have lived here all my life, with the exception of 11 months in Kokomo, Indiana, when my dad got transferred. So
Okay.
that lasted until the first snowfall, and then digging out of your driveway was not his.
Like, I'm out of here.
Yes,
That's enough of that.
yeah. Well, he was big on family too, and all our family was here in the Bay Area. His
Yeah.
mom and sisters and brothers.
How many brothers do you have?
I have 2 brothers and I have 2 sisters.
Oh, 2 of each.
Yes,
Okay. That's a big family.
it is
Wow.
a big family.
And you are alpha sibling.
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Yes, that's a nice way of putting it. I appreciate
like
it.
I like to use warlike language
There
as
you
often
go.
as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, daily life makes it more exciting.
Yeah.
Instigate some things between the siblings. Hopefully. And they I'm assuming at least a couple of them live nearby still, right? 'Cause
Actually,
I've seen
everybody lives in Fremont, with the exception of me. I just moved to Livermore in December, so
you're the adventurous one.
I'm the adventurous one. Yeah, everybody else lives in Fremont. So
That I didn't know that you moved to Livermore,
mhm.
because when you said, "Oh, we can do the interview at my house in Livermore or the office in Fremont," I was like, "Wait a minute! I thought I've been to his house before."
Yeah.
It's in Fremont. It's definitely Fremont. But then, okay, so you've moved.
Yes, we
Right.
were probably 30 years in Fremont.
Yeah.
Or more. The last 20 at the house in Niles,
Yeah.
and we just moved to a little piece of land and kind of love it there.
What brought that about?
Probably traffic and everything else that's going on here. It's a great city. There's a lot of great people. There's a lot of stuff to do.
All
But
these commercial real
just a
estate
little-
developments, right?
That's right,
Pushing
exactly.
you out
Yeah.
of here.
Just a little open space.
Yeah.
It sounded like a good idea. So we're sitting on about an acre right now, and it's very quiet.
That's great.
Yeah.
Right on. Niles is charming, though.
It is
I've always
very nice.
liked that area. I spent Saturday over there at that car show.
Yes.
Yeah, that was fun.
Love that car show.
Yeah. So then I'd love to... Normally, on a lot of these interviews, if you hear it, I just go from one end to the other,
Okay.
and we pick up whatever kind of falls out on the way.
Sure.
But I'd love to hyper-focus a bit on a couple subjects with you. The first one is just kind of your general testimony.
Mhm.
Like, let me have it. How'd you come to know Christ?
Mhm.
What's it look like for you? What's it meant for you? And then the specific subject of adoption. I'd love to
Yes.
get into that.
Yeah, very important subject for me.
Love to. I haven't talked to anyone yet who has adopted anyone.
Mhm.
I've talked to stepkids, I think. 1 or 2. Yeah, but not adopted. So this will be great. So if you could just, go through your testimony with me, basically, and tell me how you
Okay.
got to know him.
We grew up in a Catholic household, and my mom was very religious and wanted us to attend church and catechism. I even went to a school with nuns with long rulers where they could
They whack you around.
whack your hand. Yes, but it's where I learned cursive writing, so I'm not going to complain.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So we kept going to church. We moved to San Jose in the probably late 60s, early 70s. And we would walk to our catechism classes. More times than not, my mom would take us to church. My dad was a little bit when he could, but my dad was a had a very, very strong work ethic and was working multiple jobs at one point before he ever started real estate. So we learned about the church that way. And I would tell you that, you learn about Christ as a child. It doesn't, at least for me, it didn't necessarily touch me as deeply as I know Christ now. So that was all good. I grew up, and then I kind of went my own way, as a lot of kids do. I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and my dad knew absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So that was a learning experience in and of itself. But I found myself coming back to the church on my own, maybe 30 years ago, just because I felt there was more to life than what I was seeing. A lot of issues and concerns that I had, and I just felt drawn towards God at that time. I married in 1992, started going to church shortly after that, and my wife followed me, and so became this became the road towards finding and knowing Christ. Then over the years, I would kind of fluctuate in and out. I would read the Bible cover to cover, and every time was different. Every time was impacted me differently, and drew me closer to God. And finally at the point, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I felt like I was there, which isn't saying a lot, unfortunately. 90% of the time when you are seeking Christ is there every time. It's not like he's abandoned you. It's not like you just feel like sometimes you're in that dry spot.
Yeah.
And but he's always been there. A lot of it has to do, at least for me, not feeling worthy of Christ's love. And so trying to get to the point where you can accept it and realize it for what it is really kind of turned my world around.
That was 10 years ago?
Yeah,
or
probably
so.
about 10 years ago, yeah.
What denomination would you say you grew up as?
Well, I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
When we started going back to church, I went to St. Joseph's right down the road here.
Yeah.
And Father Manny is still there, and he's an amazing guy. But when we noticed our son, there was no program for the kids at the time. And so my brother Dominic was attending Centerville Presbyterian Church, and so we decided to go there because they had a program.
Right.
We became deeply involved. I ended up working on the sound system, so I would set up all the sound and for each service. And then we both taught Sunday school for all the kids all the way till my son grew up.
And you said you didn't teach kids. Come on.
I did what I could. I don't do what you do. You're very skilled at it. And then, of course, my wife was the first one to find Resonate, and at the adult school, I believe.
Yeah.
Mitchie Sierra might have been the one who actually invited her, and then they invited me, and that was it for me.
You're in.
I was in it.
You're in. What if you could say what your perspective on the gospel was before versus, when you say it kind of clicked for you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is these are hard things to articulate, but
Sure.
What does that transition look like? Because I have a similar story. I grew up in a Catholic church, and I always tell people that I don't know if the gospel just wasn't taught or I wasn't listening.
Mm-hmm.
Probably both.
Yeah, I would say the same thing.
Because I heard a lot of these things, and they do the reading and you sing the songs and you hear these, but it just for some reason I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you do. Like what did that look like for you?
It's like somebody reading a calculus book to you and have you try to do the problem. You hear it. He might even show you pictures, but you're not necessarily going to be able to do it. When it all turns around, and that was the Bible for me. The Bible was a great book, but it really wasn't necessarily impacting or meaningful necessarily to my life because I couldn't relate. I just couldn't relate. And the time that I found that I could accept Christ's love for me was a game changer. Then it became more like reading elementary school math. Oh, now I get it. Okay, now I get it because it became simpler. It didn't become so complex for me. I could read a passage of the Bible and not necessarily fully understand it, but I would understand aspects of it, and I would understand how that impacted me. And then you come alongside some very, very great teachers, Pastor Ryan, Jackson, Scott. Chase had an unbelievable sermon this last week. That was fabulous. I mean, you could really relate to it.
Right between the eyes, huh?
It was very good. Yeah. But that kind of teaching, along with the MC groups, which are phenomenal. MC groups will help you grow twice as fast, if not more, than you could on your own.
Yeah. It's that community, right? It's that, I know you, you know me kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I always find that the sermon is kind of like the general, marching order. And then the MC is when you actually sit down and you say, okay, what did that mean for, me, personally? And that's that sharpening time, for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So then, how long have you been an MC leader? You've been doing that?
I think only about a year, maybe.
Okay.
You remember when I was at Glenn's? So
yeah, we were in the same one.
I want to say about a year.
Okay. Well, I'm realizing how many ways that we've crossed paths by accident so you were in Centerville.
Yes.
So Brett Hall.
Of course.
Then. Okay.
Yeah. Brett's a great guy. Young Life, devout something
coffee.
Else I'm working. Yes. Something else I'm involved in, as a matter of fact.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah. Actually, we have a Young Life event coming up June 1st in Livermore. So
Young Life is awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
That was one thing that I kicked around at one point. I was talking to Brett, and it's like, is this something I want to go in with? And the timing just wasn't working. My work schedule was funky. I only showed up to a couple of things. But I was like, that's something I wanted to get in on. I just missed the boat on it. Maybe.
I
don't know.
Think you found a different ship.
Time isn't over, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I know quite a few. Carol Carter.
Carol's awesome. Carol and Hugh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great folks.
Oh, yeah.
That's neat. I had another question. What was I going to say? Darn it. Back through your testimony, right?
Sure.
So when you say go back again to the gospel itself.
Yeah.
What came to light in that message that was because I think there's like this keystone, and it's this I get the gospel, and I find that's what opens up Scripture. So when you say you start making connections, it's like elementary math now.
Yeah.
Something clicked in there, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Is what was that nugget that you realized that changed things?
What is that author? I'm trying to remember the author that I read. Richard Keller, I believe, wrote a book on prayer.
It was Tim Keller.
Tim Keller. Thank you. So Timothy Keller, and he wrote a book on prayer that just completely changed my life. Completely changed my life. And that probably was beyond 10 years ago. But that book taught me more about my relationship with God than just about anything, because it spoke so highly of the ability to communicate with God, at His invitation, anytime, anywhere, for any reason, and for anybody. And so that, that kind of made it personal for me. That, God's there for me. God's, looking for me. He's anxious to hear my thoughts, my prayers. He wants to hear my concerns. He's just there. And when that relationship became really evident for me, that's kind of when the gospel opened up.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing to think that we have that kind of access?
It is.
To the creator of the universe.
It's the most phenomenal thing.
It's like, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
To think that, when Christ died and breathed his last, the curtain divided, and all of a sudden, anytime, like I said, nobody has to go before you. What an honor. I mean, what a blessing.
Yeah, what a relationship to have. Yeah. It's amazing. Does this look like the book that you're talking about? Tim Keller, Prayer. That's the one?
Yep. That's it.
The whole title is just Prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Keller, Prayer. I may have read this, or I've at least seen it.
I just finished a second book last week by him and his wife on marriage that was given to me as a recommendation by, I think it was Jackson that recommended that book, and that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
His wife actually wrote letters to C.S. Lewis that got answered. Which
Really?
I found incredible. Yeah, just incredible.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
If you ever want a good book recommendation, you go to Jackson or Ryan, one of the two.
Yeah.
Into his office, and he'll tell you could just take them.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's fast forward a bit then, and let me into this adoption story.
Oh.
So give me the birth order, how many you had, kind of the family structure overview, and then how this adoption plugged into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was married a long time ago, probably about, that would be 40 years ago. And we were married for about 7.5 years, and we had 2 beautiful children, Kimberly and Jennifer. Kimberly is a sweetheart. She's actually working to be a teacher's assistant right now.
Right
My
on.
daughter Jennifer is going to be graduating from nursing college.
All right.
She's already passed all the tests. She's just working on her state test now, and we're super proud of her.
That's the stressful spot.
That is. Yeah.
She'll make it.
I think her final was 9 hours. It was from 6 a.m. till 3 p.m. And so,
dude.
Yeah, I just don't know how she did it, but she's very smart, and we're very proud of her. But then I got remarried in, like I said, 1992.
Okay.
And Ann and I could not have children together. So we, this is all God. So let me make that totally clear, that everything I'm speaking today is meant to bring God glory, first of all. Please keep that in mind when I explain this.
Yeah.
So when we were dating, we were bowling. We used to go bowling together all the time. Fremont Bowl, I think it was.
Yeah.
And when we bowled, a couple of people on the team were foster parents, and there were specifically emergency foster parents. So
right.
They would take in kids, that came in right off the street. I remember way back then, one of the children actually had AIDS, which was a huge deal back in the early 90s. That was something,
That was rare.
Very rare. But, you see all this stuff about, we would see them with one child this week, and then, they'd have other child, the following weeks.
Right.
And then all of a sudden a child would pop back up again. And we'd say, what's the deal? And they would tell us that, they found the child with their mother in an abandoned warehouse somewhere, took the child back, and then California law would give the child almost right back to the mother.
Right.
And that was really hard. It was really hard for us to do, and we weren't taking care of the child. But so we saw a lot of that, but we also saw a lot of great, beautiful success stories, some great kids that came through, and So it kind of clicked in our mind down the road when we couldn't have children that, hey, maybe we should consider this adoption thing. And we were both nervous about it. But we decided to give it a go. And the interesting thing is that just about the time we made that decision, unbeknownst to us, our son Jacob was born. And so we started taking a 10-week course through Alameda County. They design it that way specifically because they want to test the parents. First of all, can you hang?
Yeah.
And about 50% of them don't, which is probably a good thing.
What does that entail? Like, what are they?
Everything from background checks to fingerprinting to blood tests to family background.
Wow.
And then of course there's studies about the realities of adoption and so forth. So
Yeah. That's pretty rigorous.
it is rigorous.
Wow.
Ann and I were just talking about this just the other day again, just kind of going back through the history of it, and Ann was saying how tough it was, and when we were at the end, she was like, I don't want to do the emergency foster parent because I can't give any of the kids back.
You get so
won't work.
Yeah. Right.
And so we ended up finishing the course, went through the winter, and then the following early spring, they let us know that we might have a child available to us. Now, at the time, and remember this is 20 years ago, at the time the county was being told not to allow other race children to go with what you would look at Ann and I and say we're white. I'm Portuguese, my wife's Italian. But they were saying that they didn't want to do that because the importance at the time was maintaining the ethnicity culture of that child. And so they would tell us, I'm sorry, you're not going to have any African American kids, or you're not going to have any Hispanic kids.
Interesting.
And so because this is Alameda County, we really don't think you're going to find a child, but we'll keep an eye out for it.
That's interesting. It seems so. I mean, I sort of get it, but it seems pretty backwards at the same time, right?
Looking back on it, absolutely.
We're going to segregate you for a good reason? Is that, I don't know.
Ann and I didn't get it.
Okay.
At the time, I can tell you, we were both like, why not? We don't care. It doesn't bother.
Human, right?
Exactly. I mean, a child without a parent is a child without a parent.
Right.
So anyway...
Gosh.
Keeping in mind, of course, all this, that Jacob was being born at the time we started taking classes.
Yeah.
So the funny thing was the foster parents were in Livermore. So we would drive out to Livermore, and we saw Jacob, and Jacob, he was a doll. Going back just a little bit.
Yeah.
The county faxed us a picture when they used to have faxes. Yeah. And so we get this, crispy rolled up paper of a black and white drawing, it seemed like. But it was this beautiful little boy. It was just his face. And all he was doing was smiling. And my wife was going, I don't know, I'm not sure. And I called her and I told her, if we don't adopt this boy, we're not adopting anybody, because this is the one. This is the one. And at the time, she actually worked for a hospital, and one of the doctors there said, I don't know, you could be at risk here. That child could grow up and maybe have real bad problems mentally, intelligence-wise. You just don't know. And he said, I personally wouldn't recommend that you adopt the child.
Is that just the circumstances of the birth, or the mom, or
the mom?
Okay.
The drugs. At the time,
Yeah.
And it just didn't seem to matter to me. I didn't at the time. There was nothing more right than saying that's the child for us. And so we did move ahead. We went to Livermore, and Jacob just came running to me, basically. I mean, he wasn't running at the time, but...
How old was he?
About 8 months. 8 months, but he was close.
Got it.
He was starting to try and get up, and I think by the second time we went, Jacob actually took his very first steps to me, and the foster parents were like blown away, and they said, "We're going to let you take Jacob home for the weekend, then you have to bring him back." And they had already checked out our house and everything,
Right.
And so we took Jacob for the weekend, and he never went back.
Yeah.
Jacob just stayed at our house.
I was going to say, I don't think you're going to bring him home. Yeah.
Yeah. They just said, okay, well, if you're sure. And we said, yeah, absolutely. And
Wow.
but part of that process, too, was the mother who came back into play when she found out that Jacob was going to be adopted. And so the court actually said that, she would have to give up her rights if she's, going to let you adopt them. And so in order to facilitate that or see if that was possible, which was gut-wrenching for both Ann and I, because we did have the possibility that we might lose Jacob at the time.
Yeah.
We would go up to San Leandro, and Ann would wait outside nervously, and I would go in with Jacob, and it was unfortunate because I know the mom had some definite struggles. But every time she tried to pick him up, because he wouldn't go with her, he cried. And then as soon as she let him go, he would come running to me.
Wow.
And when we finally ended up in court, the mother, God bless her, said, "Hey, I can see that he's really being loved," and she gave up her rights.
Wow.
At that time. So, and Jacob's a very, very special young man. Jacob, all my kids are absolutely amazing, but we're talking about adoption here, and so growing up, it was just so much fun to watch him, and he's got a huge heart. I mean, just a huge heart. We had a family in Niles, a single mother with a couple daughters, and their house caught fire. I think Jacob was at 14, and he asked permission to sell hot dogs and Cokes so he could help them get some money for clothes and stuff like that. That's the kind of man he is. So.
Entrepreneur.
Yep.
Yeah.
Today he's 24 and
Okay.
he's doing very, very well, but still has the same heart.
Wow. What a gosh. So I mean, that mom, like I mean, I'm not a mom, so it's hard to say I know what she's going through, but I could imagine that roller coaster.
Absolutely.
Right, for her is like, because she knows, like, this, I got myself in this mess. She could have made life really tough for you and for him. Yeah.
Yeah, we
she made
prayed
a
a lot for her.
I think she made a wise choice, but that had to have been tough, really hard.
Very tough. And we've never tried to hide anything from Jacob. Jacob knows who she is, and
right.
If Jacob ever wants to see her, we'll try and find her. We don't know where she's at right now.
Okay, you didn't keep track or anything like that. No.
Tried to, but somewhere along the line she kind of just disappeared, and we weren't able to locate her. So,
yeah, interesting if he would try at some point.
Yeah,
I feel like most adoptions that I talk to, is that what you call adoption? Mm-hmm. Adopted people that I talk to.
Yeah.
Most of them seem to have that, like, yeah, at some point, they might tell you no, but then later, like, yeah, I kind of want to know who this person is.
Yeah, very natural.
Yeah.
Very natural thing.
Yeah, I know 2 students at Resonate who are adopted, and one of them actually has no idea. They know that they're adopted, but they have no clue who her parents were, where they are, couldn't tell you where to start looking. She could tell you what country. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
Not a name, nothing.
Very tough.
Yeah. And the other one could probably get close, maybe the right city, maybe a name. Yeah. But that's 20 years ago, so who knows? Yeah. So he's 24 now?
Jacob's 24.
He's a grown-up.
Yes, he is.
Is he still around this area?
Yeah, actually he still lives with us.
Oh,
He got a job in Livermore at the same time, so he just stayed in the house that we moved into.
that worked out.
Yeah, it worked out really good for him because
Yeah.
there's enough land for him to store his truck and things on. So he's loving life. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
So as you're looking back at, raising a kid, right? What were, and you don't have to get super personal. I mean, you draw your own boundaries with it, right? But, what were some of the things you weren't expecting about having an adopted son?
Like I said, I had raised two girls up to that point, and so Anne was kind of coming into this all new, and so it was all new to her as far as raising a child. And she is like one of the best mothers I've ever seen. She's so good. And takes care of all three kids very, very well. But if you ask me, is there anything that I didn't expect in relation to raising Jacob as an adopted child, I would tell you no, there wasn't anything. That's it's a little difficult to explain, but obviously I've described the process. The process wasn't necessarily the easiest, and I don't think it should be. I'm kind of glad it wasn't, super easy sign on a dotted line. I think it might make it too easy to give up at that point. But when an adopted child walks into your home, crawls into your home, whatever that might be, they're yours. I mean, they're no different than a biological child. They mean every bit as much as anybody else. I don't even think of the word adopt until, we get on a subject like this.
Yeah.
Jacob's my son.
Yeah.
He's a beautiful man, and we're very proud of him. But schooling, everything else, I will tell you the one thing. When we did adopt Jacob, we basically stopped what we were doing, and we sat down and talked, and we prayed about whether Anne should work or not. And I got to tell you, that was a tough choice at that time because we were young, we had different jobs, we were single and having a good time too. That was a big part too. But
right.
When you take on that responsibility, all of a sudden things kind of change. Your focus becomes more dominant on how best to raise your child. And when we prayed about it, we just felt God saying that the best thing was for Anne to stay home, and she did. And we were blessed by it. Jacob was blessed by it. And somehow or another we survived financially through God's blessing. But it was wonderful. I remember Anne saying, okay, I'm only going to stay home until he's 5. And I said, okay, whatever you want to do. Because she did love her job. Yeah. She did love working, and she's very good at what she does. She's very detail-oriented. When 5 rolled around, she just started helping at the school, and then she helped more at the school. And eventually down the road, Fremont Christian hired her, and now she's the executive admin for the superintendent there. But
really?
Yeah. Oh. But she treasured every single second she got to be with Jacob. So
that's great. Did he go to Fremont Christian?
He did. Yeah.
Okay.
Kindergarten all the way through. Yeah.
So she was room mom,
and
then all the way. Yeah. I think my mom was room mom for a minute. They didn't hire her though.
Yeah. No. They couldn't get rid of my wife. My wife was there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just over there a couple months ago. I did their chapel for their kids. It was great.
That's nice.
Super cute. Some smart kids too.
Oh, sure.
They kept up. Couldn't believe it. Yeah. Man, what a cool experience. So go through some of the wins of it. Like how is having I don't even want to say adopted son anymore.
I know it sounds wrong now, but that's okay.
How has it changed your heart? In what ways did you see yourself grow through that experience? That's the first boy too, right? You said you had 2 girls.
Yeah,
okay,
2 girls.
So this is a boy now also.
Yep.
How's that going for you?
It's awesome. I mean, a dad has his girls, which is cool. I always love having my girls. Yeah, and then when a boy comes along, it's baseball and soccer and
little caveman.
Yes, I think we just passed the anniversary of his first home run in 2006.
Yeah,
I actually have it on my calendar. So, but
that's awesome.
Yeah, but it's just it's no different. Every child is so very, very special. I mean, it's just hard to imagine what life would have been without them.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult because it's really been a blessing. Any parent will tell you that raising a child is a lot of work, and it is. But the blessings far outweigh the cost.
Yeah. Did you ever have any struggles with the cliche line, "You're not my real dad," like that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Any of that ever come up for you guys, or
no? It's because again, we just didn't. Adoption never really came up in our household. It was he's our son. There's no difference. So didn't look at him any differently, and he never. He's a good, like I said, he's a good son. Even when we had our meeting of the minds, so to speak.
You humans.
Those are all good. I'm very thrilled that he comes to me every once in a while and asks for advice. So that's cool.
Have I met him? I haven't seen you together, but I meet people separately and then figure out later they're related. So okay.
You might have. He came to a couple things. He was. When he was at Fremont Christian, he actually worked the sound for a lot of the events with Randy Benitez, who's there, and John Eshelman, who did the sound. So he did a lot of the sound work.
I probably saw him then.
You probably did.
Yeah.
But you'll meet him again, I'm sure.
Yeah. I can't wait now.
Yeah.
So as Resonate Church, I mean, this podcast isn't a Resonate podcast, right? Mm-hmm. But our church is going through like an adoption initiative, I think. I don't know if we've named it
right
yet. We'll find some catchy name for it. But there's a huge, I want to say supply, not a supply. What is the word I'm looking for? There's a huge number of kids that are in that system still, probably more than before. Mm-hmm. We have a program that we partner with called Safe Families, which is basically similar to what you described, where kids who, for whatever reason, the parents went away for a few days, and they so they do the temporary adoptions and all that. So there's tons of kids out there. I mean, if everyone in our church adopted a kid, there'd still be basically just as many.
Yeah, that seems like it.
So we're trying to basically construct a structure on which we can lead families through that process and support them as they go through the exploratory, like, is this for you phase, the background, the fingerprinting, the urine testing, the home inspections, all that stuff. Like that's not easy to do on your own. And a lot of times, from what I've heard, the adoption agencies aren't really the best, like, warm hand-holding type environment either for, prospective parents. What are some things that you would say to somebody who's, like, considering it? Like, okay, we might be able to do this. Like, what are some things that you'd tell them, think about this, don't think about that, avoid this, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Great question. I would, I make sure that, I think you just found a new direction for me after the setup crew. So,
oh, really?
Probably would love to be part of that because,
well, setup is going away soon.
I heard that. Yes. So, adoption's can be a very scary thing. The county isn't necessarily the hand-holding type, and
Right.
their primary goal is to watch over the safety of the child to the best of their ability. So, when you look at a new parent, you gotta, you talk about, diapers and feeding and illness and medical coverage and dental and sports and,
Right.
But when we had one of our members' meetings and this first popped up, there was a whole new side that I was exposed to from, I believe it was Ryan who was talking about it. And specifically what he mentioned was the need for God-led children, people that will introduce God into a lot of these children's lives. And that was eye-opening. I mean, that was sort of something that we just did in our household. But when you look at Resonate and the program that they're trying to build, and you look at society as a whole right now, there is not just a need for adopting a child, but a need for bringing up a child to know Jesus Christ and know God.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's just huge. You can prep a parent, but and there's a lot of stuff that you can talk about, questions that need to be answered. There'll be questions that pop up when they do adopt or choose to adopt.
Yeah.
But having God as a foundation is a major thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I've always taken offense to the term at-risk youth, because I think they all are.
Yeah, yeah,
Even the ones that seem the most together.
yeah,
Like we're all at risk. We're all at the same risk,
yeah.
same situation, same condition.
Yep.
Sin or redemption. Like
Yes.
that's it. And
Yeah.
yeah. I hope. Gosh, I can't wait to see what that looks like for just our little area, And I know we're not gonna take over the world. That'd be great.
Yep.
Put that on the list. But
exactly.
just the rational side of me saying, why can't we see, 100 just in our church? Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
I agree.
And the whole idea that, a lot of times as Christian folk, we get all on the pro-life bus, right? And Ryan put it this way, that he says, like, we're pro-life, but really in a lot of ways, we're just pro-birth.
Right.
We don't really do much afterward.
Yeah.
Like, great, you made it. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, where are we then?
Yep.
Where are we for the 1-year-old afterward?
Right.
Okay, you got your way. They're born. Now what? They need to know Christ.
Absolutely.
Someone's got to tell them. Well, let's hold a sign up for that. Let's start a march for that.
Exactly.
Pro whole life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not just the birth.
I'm excited about it. I dream of, standing in front of a group of, first, second, third, fourth graders and having a certain percentage of those, like I know, like those were the ones that, we took in.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that too is that you don't just change that child's life by bringing them up in a godly household. You change their children and their children's children. I mean, it goes on.
It's a legacy.
Yeah,
yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, that's right. So, set up and tear down is going to go away. Maybe.
I think you may have found a spot for me. Yeah.
Maybe a little adoption coaching.
There you go.
It's the next chapter. That's kind of my next question for you is, I feel like you've lived a pretty full life and you have all these experiences and all that. Like what, beyond getting your next degree, what's next for you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, continuing to grow in Christ in the Word is huge. But I realize now being in an MC group, men's MC group, and then now leading an MC group,
Yeah.
that we need men.
Hmm.
We need men who are strong in their faith and can really understand the depth that Christ's love is for them. It's a huge foundation. Men are knowing that I am one. Knowing
You have some experience.
we have some experience. Yeah, men are stubborn. They're very self-reliant.
Yeah.
And often they find it very difficult to find a place to turn because they think that somehow or another that indicates that they're weak. And
Right.
the truth of the matter is, Christ turns all that around. So that's been a real eye-opener and a very special thing for me to do is to learn with these men about what that love means, and then where do you take it from there? How do you show God's love in your life? How does that work?
Right.
We had a great discussion 2 weeks ago on how do you tell others about God? And we all chuckled at the fact that to some people it becomes a very scary thing about knocking doors or holding a sign out on the street corner kind of deal, and that's super scary, and most of us agree that that's not going to impact too many people. But the truth of the matter is when you live that kind of life, when you find some of that peace that God's giving you in the midst of all the turmoil, in the midst of all the society throws at you, and people start wondering how in the heck, that's how you show Christ. And telling others that you've got a great church, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. You got a great church. Well, that's very interesting. Where is this church? Well, those are really simple things. When you get people coming to you, I think Carl Medford described it really, really well. He said, you don't need to necessarily go running out. He said, but God's going to be giving opportunities to you, here and there. Just be ready for them and recognize them and be open to sharing once those opportunities arrive.
Carl tends to put things he puts a lot of things well.
He does a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. That funny that a situation happened today. I was at my other job, the trucking job, and a lot of them kind of know what I do. A lot of them just know that I don't work there as often as everybody else does, and they're like, "What's going on here?" And it just comes up. They ask, inevitably people will ask me, like, what do you do? I say, oh, well, I work like maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days a week here. And then the rest of the time I'm a children's minister at a church in Fremont. I teach kids about the Bible and about Jesus, and their reactions are always interesting.
Yeah.
Some people are like, really? Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah. Do you know my friend? Whatever. They're church people. Other ones are like, oh, okay. Like, that's weird. And I know it's weird, but it's great.
But you planted a seed.
Yeah. And it just means like, okay, now I got to be on watch. Or they're on watch.
Yeah.
And there's been a few people that actually do at some point say, hey, so I got a question for you, and they something about their family or some counseling they're looking for. Yeah, it's those relational tidbits, I think.
Absolutely.
But I'll tell you what, I get nervous about it.
Uh-huh.
I do. I'll stand up every week in front of a whole church of people and say some of the most bold, like, Bible stuff you've ever heard. But one greasy dude in a truck can get me. Oh, here we go. We're gonna talk about Jesus right now.
How do I say that?
What am I gonna do? He's gonna get me. Yeah, they never do though. I haven't been gotten yet.
No, another great way is to offer to pray for somebody. So, we run across people every day in our lives that are struggling in one fashion or another. Maybe it's just a bad day. Maybe it's just a bad moment. Maybe it's an illness. Maybe it's a family member. But to ask if that you can pray for them or pray for that person is another great way just to introduce them to Christ.
Most people don't say no.
No, actually, I don't. I've never had anybody tell me no, and I ask everybody to pray for them. So
yeah, there's a great story. I forget the pastor's name, but he said that every time he'd go to the same spots all the time, and he would ask his barista, anything I could pray for you. And he says the first handful of times people are like weirded out by it, but eventually they're like, you know what, yeah. And here's the situation, here's all that. Please pray for this. In 3 weeks, our high schoolers are going to Vegas.
yeah,
Yeah. And they do this thing out there called free prayer. So they have a sandwich board or a giant sign on the front.
Oh, very cool.
It says free prayer. And they walk around Fremont Street. And that's another one. I've seen people turn it down. I don't need that,
Yeah.
And it's scary for the kids. And they're like, oh, gosh. But then afterward, we're like, are you okay? Yeah. Did they cut your head off or anything?
Yeah, yeah.
No. Okay. So you're good then. Let's ask them. Like, keep going. And by the end of it, they're just like talking to everybody, random people about all kinds of stuff. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
What a great way to take that fear away.
I know. Right into the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Vegas. They don't call it Sin City because it's cute.
Yeah, right. Right.
They're in the lion's den over there. You can feel the gremlins just looking at them from the eaves of the buildings. Like, what are you? Yeah. I guess I had one more question for you. Sure. Is just, I'd love to know what God is kind of teaching you right now. You talked some about that we need men, stuff like that. But what are you learning? What new connections are you making as you're just continuing to mature? Right?
Yeah. I would tell you that I probably more than anything, God repeatedly has to tell me it's okay. You're struggling. Maybe you're not feeling good. It could be an illness. It could be just you're tired, or maybe you're overwhelmed at work, and God just tells you it's okay. But the big thing, I always tell everybody, the first thing that most people want to do when they're disappointed in themselves or they face a struggle, most often people try to fix it themselves, demean themselves, and walk away from the church or walk away from, they seemed overwhelmed. And I try to let people know that the very first place, and I try to live that too, by the way, is the very first thing you should do in every situation, no matter what it is to go to prayer. Because as we touched on before, God is there always. He's always there. It's not a drive-through. You won't get your fix at the next window. It doesn't fix the problem necessarily right away, but I can tell you that God will tell you He's got this. Jeremiah 29:11, right? I've got that actually printed in our bathroom wall. But put up a couple Bible verses in our walls here at work.
I saw that.
Just turning back to God, not away from God during those times is probably the most important thing you can do. I think personally that getting prayer as a foundation in our church and in our society, getting people to come back to prayer, not as a last resort, but as a beginning. I walk usually every day with my dog. I walk a couple miles, 2-3 miles, and almost that entire time I enjoy the morning. I enjoy the sunrise, and I'm talking to God almost the entire time. so far he hasn't gotten tired of it. So but I come back and it just feels great. And I will pray in my car. I'll pray at my desk. I like to pray before I actually start doing my work, because I think that's a great way to start the day.
Yeah.
So prayer is a huge thing. I can't emphasize it enough.
It's awesome. I was talking to someone about this. This is going to sound off topic, but it's coming back. The homeless situation in Fremont or anywhere you look, and there's all kinds of debates about, like, what do we do? Like, do we build housing? Do we open up facilities for, like, what is the solution here? And every city planner or everyone will tell you something different. And I think there's definitely something that needs to be done for the immediate crowd. But what about the homeless people that are 2 years old right now?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do we get there? And I think it's a return to prayer.
Yeah.
It's a return to a connection with Christ. I think the absence of that can be attributed, I don't want to say to all, but a whole heck of a lot of these social issues that we're getting all fired up about these days. It's like they took prayer out of the school. They take God out of movies. You can barely do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Which is weird. It's not a prayer, but it's just as hated.
Yeah.
And it's like that, you want to ask, like, how's that working?
Right.
And we need to get back to it.
Yeah.
I think as a prayerful nation, not to say we were perfect. I think we were the most perfect so far, with a lot of problems. But getting back to prayer, I think, is a huge weapon.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, even for myself as an individual.
I've never seen prayer hurt anybody.
No.
I've never seen it. And that's why it becomes almost more mystifying to me.
Yeah.
To try and understand why you would push God out of the places like school. And
I know.
I don't get that. I won't pretend to get that. I think most people use the reasoning of fallen Christians or people that mess up.
They look to disturbed individuals to represent the general body, right?
And they don't know God.
Right.
That's just the bottom line. So
back to prayer.
Yep.
It's good advice. I love it. All right. Well, I think we got where we're going.
Oh gosh, I sure appreciate the time.
This is great, John. Just as I've gotten to know you over the last 3 years or so, maybe 4 years. I think the first time I met you was at the tamales thing at Cesar Chavez.
That's
you brought a tamale pot.
Yeah. And
you had your name on it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know who you were till afterward, because my job was to get that back to you. Because I was interning at the time, and it was at our church office.
I remember unloading. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I got to get this back to this guy.
That was a lot of fun, by the way.
John Dutra. So, okay, that's him. And I just, as I've gotten to know you, I've developed a huge amount of respect for you as a leader, as a godly guy. Just, I don't know how you do all the things that you do. I'm a high capacity person, and I stay pretty busy. But then when I hear your rundown, I'm like, what the heck? What do you must drink a lot of coffee. I don't know, or something like that. You just got the spirit in you. Either way, I got a huge amount of respect for you.
Oh, likewise, very much so.
It's just a blessing to know you, blessing to be part of the same church as we move into the next phase. I don't know what it's going to look like, or, who knows? I feel like a lot of times we're just hanging on for the ride.
Hey.
We'll see where he takes the train,
The one thing we do know is God will be there.
He will, yeah.
Yeah.
So, on to the next chapter. Look forward to meeting Jacob when I can.
You got it.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, Ryan. Take care.
All right. And there's another one down. Thank you so much, John, for talking to me today. And thank you out there for listening to another episode. I really hope you enjoyed that. I was super encouraged by his words about adoption and just what that's meant for him, his attitude about it, and just, gosh, there's so many kids out there, man, who need to hear about Christ, who need to experience that kind of unconditional love that I think is so unique to a child that's been adopted. You know, I believe that all of us have been adopted in some sense, in a real sense, by Christ. And what a great way to show that to a human being than to literally adopt them in this world. What an inspiration. That's awesome. Thank you so much for listening. Again, you can follow the show on Facebook, the Great Stories Podcast there. And if you want to be on the show, shoot me an email at thegreatstoriespodcast@gmail.com. Stay tuned and see you next time. Thanks for listening. You're still listening. Thanks for leaving your tuner on. Either you are expecting to hear my voice again because you know this is coming, or you found it by accident. Either way, this is kind of like the secret portion of the show. And this is the part where I just kind of talk about whatever's on my mind for the day. If you don't want to listen to it, turn it off. This is not mandatory listening, for sure. So today I had an interesting conversation, and it's one that I've had a couple of times before. And it involves the subject of relationship maintenance. And I think this is interesting. This was in the context of a high school student who says that he's feeling like kind of disconnected from his community, like he's not as connected with his friends, and almost like gosh, I don't have any friends, that kind of thing. And I've kind of felt that way before. And so what I was processing as we're talking about it is this concept of relationship maintenance. And I think it's something that we don't really talk about enough. And because if you think about, like, okay, I'm the type of guy where if somebody doesn't reach out to me ever, or they don't call me and say, like, hey, you want to hang out, my assumption is that they don't want to, or that they're too busy, or they're not interested in hanging out with me. But I've realized as time has gone on that there's actually other people who are thinking the same thing about me, right? And if you're doing it, you're basically playing the opposite game of chicken, where I'm waiting for someone to call me and they're waiting for me to call them, and then nobody calls anybody, and we never hang out, and we're not really good friends. And it's a frustrating balance, because I don't think anybody wants to be in that position where they're just initiating all the time. And I find myself in that position because I'm an initiator. So I'm always the one making the appointments, sending the texts, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And, I probably don't really give people room to initiate with me. But I do have a couple folks in my life, a couple of my guy friends that, yeah, they will actually routinely reach out and say, hey, how you doing? Like, what are you doing tonight? What are you doing tonight? What are you doing? And I always think that's great. I always, even if I can't do it, I think it's great when you actually get that call. And gosh, I mean, I'm 36 years old, right? And so now I'm processing this as an adult and thinking about it from the perspective of a freshman or sophomore in high school, talking about how I don't know my friends as well, or I'm not connected. And really, at that age, honestly, most of a kid's social connections are very passive in their formation, right? Either these are family friends, and I'm friends with this kid just because my parents are friends with their parents and we see each other all the time. Or, you're friends at school, or you're just friends with because you're in that place all the time. Or you're friends at church because I see you every week, maybe twice a week if we do youth group and all that. But none of these relationships really require a lot of intentionality or maintenance. And I think it's when life starts getting a little bit busier is when you kind of discover that you actually have to participate. And I think, gosh, we should take, this is just hitting me as I'm talking, that, man, we should, because I work with high schoolers quite often, and I should take some time to actually talk to them about like how to be good friends. What does it look like to pursue like real connection and relationship with people? What role does intentionality play in these relationships? And that's a real uphill struggle for them, and I think it is for a lot of adults too, because we get busy, man. We're working every day. We got laundry to do and shopping to do, and I got to cook dinner, and I got this appointment and that meeting, and I'm going to this event and that thing, and it's like, it seems like whenever I want to hang out with one of my just friends that aren't related to any of those things, I have to bust out the calendar and plan like a month ahead. Okay, like here, 28 days from now, from 4 p.m. to 6, and we have dinner, like that kind of thing. It's very sad. But that's what you got to do, because I really believe that the value of community is huge. I think, and here's where I'll go with this, that I think there are a handful of ways, and I think I've said this before on the podcast at some point, that there's a handful of ways that we can grow in our spirituality and that we can grow in our walk with Christ. We can study Scripture. We can worship through song. We can pray. We can do all kinds of things. But I think one of the big ways that we can do that is actually to be plugged into Christian community and have real friendships, with people who we're peers with. No one's leading anybody. No one's got an agenda. Like our whole purpose for being friends is just to be in community with each other, to know each other, and to just have real talk and not have to worry about putting up any fronts or anything like that. And I think it's a huge advantage for our walk with Christ to have people that just know us really well, to speak into our lives. I think, unfortunately, a lot of men, it seems more so than women. I think women are better on average at, making and maintaining friendships. But guys, man, we tend to go into this weird, like, caveman mode where I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want anyone to really know me. None of that. I just want kind of superficial things. And if it gets too deep, I'm going to run away and go hide in my cave again. And, I think, a lot of guys approach making friendships like almost like dating. Like, it's just this weird and awkward. Like, do you want to be my friend? That's kind of weird. But I think it's so important. It's a skill that I don't think we're taught. I don't know that I was taught, really, how to make a friend. I mean, I could tell you theologically what friendship is and what it looks like, but I think I've learned basically by trial and error. Anyway, all that to say, I guess the conclusion of what I'm saying here, what's on my mind, right, is that I think it'd be good for parents of kids and especially high schoolers to just have that conversation about, like, what relationships do you have? Who do you connect with? Who are your friends? Who do you want to be friends with? How are you participating? What does it look like in your world to make and maintain a friendship? And once the blank stares and I don't knows are over, then you can have a conversation about that. And I think it's going to be important. So there you go. That's what's just on my mind this morning. Good friendship. I'm so excited about the show. So this is 15 episodes now. And I think I'm up over 2,000 downloads, something like that. This thing's getting real. This is exciting. I've got a handful of interviews coming up, and I've given up on the every other week thing because this, honestly, this is a spare time in the cracks of my schedule kind of thing. I'm not doing this as a business. I don't make money off it. So it's it could be a challenge sometimes scheduling wise. I just talked about, how crummy scheduling can be. And so I'm trying to throw 2-hour, 3-hour podcasts in there, here and there. It's just tricky. But I'm excited to do it. Gosh, I feel like everybody that I've had on the show, I've got this connection with now. And I feel like probably you do too. If you've gone back and listened to them, even if you don't know them, like, these people, it's rare that you actually hear just this extended version of somebody's life story. It's kind of cool that we get to do that here. So I'm excited about this. I want the show to keep growing. So, and if you're still listening to my voice after all the rambling in the last 10 minutes or so, It means you're in. And you've probably listened to other episodes too, and keep going. But I want to see this thing grow, really. I don't want my name to be great. Oh, Ryan Weber's this great, the next Joe Rogan or some crazy junk like that. I'm just excited for, the people who listen to the show to be encouraged by what they hear. Those who are already believers can hear the story of Christ working in someone else's life, and in that context, be encouraged by it. Those who are questioning, it's hard to listen to the show and not be like, okay, something happened there. This person was changed miraculously. And if you are not yet a follower of Christ and you're seeking, like, what a better way to go about seeking Him than to just hear what He's done in people. It's hard to hear these stories and just dismiss it as hocus pocus or something like that. It encourages me. I hope it encourages you. I'm so glad you're listening. So stay tuned for the next one. Thanks for listening.